March 2025, South China Sea. The waters of the South China Sea lay deceptively peaceful under the pre-dawn darkness of March 23, 2025. Beneath that tranquil surface, however, tensions had been building for months. And at the epicenter of what would soon become a pivotal moment in naval warfare history was a vessel that officially didn't exist, the USS Prometheus, designation CVX-1. The Prometheus represented the cutting edge of American naval technology, a next-generation guided missile destroyer built under the classified Project Neptune program. Unlike traditional warships, the Prometheus was designed as a floating laboratory for experimental weapons systems. Its most distinctive features were the twin electromagnetic pulse cannons, mounted amidships, capable of disabling electronics at ranges exceeding 15 kilometers. Advanced AI-driven point defense systems lined its superstructure, while its hull incorporated metamaterial stealth coating that could fool even the most sophisticated radar systems. But perhaps most revolutionary was its integrated command system, an artificial intelligence called Aegis 7 that could coordinate defensive operations faster than any human crew. The Prometheus wasn't just a warship, it was a glimpse into the Navy's autonomous future. Commander Sarah Chen had been handpicked to lead this experimental vessel. A 38-year-old officer with a distinguished record in electronic warfare, Chen had earned her reputation during the Baltic Sea incidents of 2023, where her quick thinking had prevented an international crisis. For her, commanding the Prometheus wasn't just another assignment. It was a chance to prove that American naval supremacy could adapt to the changing face of warfare. The mission that brought the Prometheus to these contested waters was officially listed as routine patrol operations. In reality, the ship was testing its systems against increasingly sophisticated threats in one of the world's most volatile regions. What Chen and her crew of 180 sailors didn't know was that they were about to face a test unlike anything their training had prepared them for. At 0347 hours, Senior Radar Operator Lieutenant James Walsh noticed the first anomalies on his scope. "Ma'am, I'm picking up multiple contacts bearing 270, he reported to the bridge. "They're moving fast, speed approximately 800 knots. Chen moved to the radar console, her expression tightening as she studied the display. The contacts were small, fast, and numerous. "How many?" she asked. "Counting. 56 confirmed contacts, possibly more masked by atmospheric interference," Walsh replied, his voice betraying growing concern. Chen felt her pulse quicken. 56 high-speed contacts meant only one thing: drone swarm. But these weren't the small reconnaissance drones they'd encountered before. The radar signatures suggested something much larger and more threatening. "General quarters," Chen ordered, her voice calm but carrying the authority that had made her one of the Navy's youngest destroyer commanders. "This is not a drill. All hands to battle stations." The ship transformed within minutes. Sailors sprinted through passageways, securing equipment and manning their posts. The bridge lights dimmed to red, and the soft hum of electronics was replaced by the urgent chatter of combat preparations. What Chen couldn't have known was that the approaching swarm represented a new generation of autonomous weapons. Each drone was roughly the size of a small aircraft, powered by advanced hydrogen fuel cells that gave them exceptional range and endurance. More critically, each carried a directed energy weapon, a compact laser system capable of burning through armor plating or disabling sensitive electronics from kilometers away. This wasn't a random attack. Intelligence agencies later determined that the swarm had been launched from a mobile platform approximately 200 kilometers away, using coordinates obtained through months of surveillance. The Prometheus hadn't just wandered into a trap, it had been specifically targeted. At 0352 hours, the first wave struck. Beams of coherent light lanced through the darkness, striking the Prometheus's forward radar array. Sparks cascaded down the superstructure as sensitive electronics were overloaded in seconds. The main search radar flickered and died, leaving the ship partially blind. "Forward array is down," reported the electronic warfare officer. "We're losing primary search capability." But the Prometheus had been designed for exactly this scenario. As the main radar died, secondary systems automatically came online. the ship's AI began coordinating point defense systems that had been designed to function even under electronic attack. Aegis 7 is engaging, announced the weapons officer. Point defense systems are active. The ship's experimental pulse cannons swiveled toward the approaching swarm, their targeting systems guided by the AI's tactical analysis. The first pulse discharge lit up the night sky with an electromagnetic burst that disabled 6 drones instantly, sending them spiraling into the sea. But the swarm adapted immediately. The remaining drones scattered into smaller groups, approaching from multiple vectors, while their laser weapons continued to rake the ship's superstructure. 2 more sensor arrays were destroyed in quick succession, leaving massive blind spots in the ship's defensive coverage. Commander Chen gripped the bridge railing as the ship shuddered under the onslaught. "Damage report," she barked. "Multiple systems compromised," came the reply from the damage control officer. "We've lost primary radar, backup communications array, and the port-side defensive grid. Fires on decks 2 and 3. Chen knew they needed help, and fast. "Communications, signal the fleet. Request immediate air support." "Ma'am, communication systems are partially down. We're transmitting on emergency frequencies only." The message did get through. Approximately 150 kilometers away, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford received the distress signal and immediately launched an emergency response. 8 FA-18E Super Hornets roared off the flight deck, their afterburners painting trails of fire against the dawn sky. But the Prometheus couldn't wait for rescue. As more drones pressed their attack, the ship's experimental weapon systems went to full power. The electromagnetic pulse cannons fired in sequence, each discharge creating a bubble of disrupted electronics that destroyed multiple drones simultaneously. Advanced close-in weapon systems engaged targets at point-blank range, filling the air with tungsten projectiles. The battle became a deadly dance of technology. Drones would approach in waves, firing their lasers to disable defensive systems, only to be met by pulses of electromagnetic energy that fried their circuits. Some broke through the defensive perimeter, striking the hull with their beam weapons and causing localized fires and system failures. At 0407 hours, the situation became critical. A coordinated attack by 12 drones simultaneously targeted the ship's power distribution center. Their combined laser output overwhelmed the shielding, causing a massive power surge that knocked out half the ship's defensive systems. "We're losing power to the starboard weapons grid," reported the engineering officer. "Main generators are cycling offline." Chen made a decision that would define her career. Transfer all remaining power to the pulse cannons. Shut down non-essential systems if necessary. It was a calculated gamble. By concentrating power in the experimental weapons, she was leaving the ship vulnerable to conventional attacks. But she had recognized something the drone's programmers hadn't anticipated. The electromagnetic pulse weapons were particularly effective against their advanced electronics. The gamble paid off. With increased power, the pulse cannon's range and effectiveness doubled. Each discharge now created electromagnetic fields that could disable drones at ranges exceeding 20 kilometers. The tide of battle began to shift. At 0415 hours, salvation arrived from above. The 8 Super Hornets from the Gerald Ford entered the battle space, their pilots immediately recognizing the chaotic scene below. Commander Rebecca Torres, the squadron leader, quickly assessed the situation. "Blue Dog lead to Prometheus," she radioed. "We see multiple hostile contacts, engaging immediately." The FA-18s dove into the swarm with devastating effect. AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles streaked from their weapon pylons, each finding its target with deadly precision. The sky erupted in explosions as drones were destroyed by the dozens. But the swarm wasn't finished. The remaining autonomous weapons shifted tactics, with some continuing to attack the ship, while others turned their attention to the approaching aircraft. For the first time in aviation history, manned fighters found themselves in aerial combat with fully autonomous opponents. The drones proved to be formidable adversaries. Their lack of human limitations allowed them to perform maneuvers that would be impossible for manned aircraft. They could sustain G-forces that would kill a human pilot and execute coordinated attacks with machine precision. Lieutenant David Park, flying Super Hornet 204, found himself pursued by 3 drones operating in perfect coordination. As he maneuvered to evade, the drones anticipated his moves, forcing him into increasingly desperate evasive actions. "Blue Dog 4 is defensive," he radioed, strain evident in his voice as he pulled his aircraft through a punishing high G-turn. "These things are learning our patterns." Commander Torres came to his aid, engaging the pursuing drones with her 20mm cannon. The close-range engagement destroyed 2 of the attackers, but the third managed to score hits on Park's aircraft with its laser weapon. "I'm hit," Park reported, "losing hydraulics and electrical systems. The beam weapon is frying my avionics." Despite the damage, Park managed to maintain control long enough to eject safely. His parachute deployed just as his FA-18 crashed into the sea, adding another casualty to the growing toll of the battle. Back on the Prometheus, Commander Chen watched the aerial battle while coordinating her ship's defense. The combination of air support and the ship's experimental weapons was gradually reducing the swarm's numbers, but not without cost. Her vessel had sustained significant damage, with multiple systems offline and several casualties among the crew. At 0428 hours, the tide decisively turned. The remaining drones, reduced to fewer than a dozen, suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of continuing their coordinated attack, they formed up and began a synchronized approach toward the ship's bridge. "All remaining hostiles are converging on our position," reported the tactical officer. "It looks like they're attempting a final kamikaze run." Chen realized this was the moment that would determine the battle's outcome. "All weapons, engage those targets. Do not let them reach this ship." The final engagement lasted less than 3 minutes, but it was the most intense of the entire battle. The Prometheus's remaining defensive systems fired continuously, supported by the circling Super Hornets. Drones were destroyed one by one as they approached, but several managed to reach the ship's outer perimeter. The last drone, its systems heavily damaged by electromagnetic pulses, managed to strike the forward superstructure before being destroyed by point defense fire. The impact caused significant structural damage, but failed to penetrate the ship's critical systems. At 0431 hours, the last hostile contact disappeared from radar screens. The Battle of the South China Sea, as it would later be known, was over. The aftermath revealed the true significance of what had occurred. The Prometheus had faced 56 autonomous attack drones in sustained combat and emerged victorious, though heavily damaged. Of the attacking swarm, none survived. The cost to the defenders was significant. 1 FA-18 lost, multiple systems damaged on the Prometheus, and several personnel wounded. But the ship remained afloat and operational. More importantly, the battle proved that advanced defensive systems could successfully counter drone swarms when properly employed. The electromagnetic pulse weapons had been particularly effective, providing a new template for anti-drone warfare. Commander Chen's tactical decisions during the engagement earned her promotion and recognition as a pioneer in autonomous warfare defense. The Prometheus itself, despite its damage, had validated the experimental technologies it carried. The incident sent shockwaves through military establishments worldwide. The age of autonomous warfare had arrived, and the implications were staggering. Nations scrambled to develop both offensive drone swarms and defensive countermeasures, triggering a new arms race in unmanned systems. For the crew of the Prometheus, the battle became a defining moment. They had faced the future of warfare and proven that human judgment, combined with advanced technology, could still prevail against autonomous threats. The South China Sea returned to its deceptive calm, but naval warfare had been forever changed. The USS Prometheus sailed home bearing the scars of the first major engagement between traditional naval forces and autonomous swarms, carrying with it lessons that would reshape military doctrine for generations to come. In the classified reports that followed, one conclusion stood clear. The future of naval combat would be defined not by the size of guns or the thickness of armor, but by the speed of electronics and the wisdom of the commanders who wielded them.